I've tried to talk bands out of putting out records with me on numerous occasions. Maybe I'll catch fire. They were offered a major label deal, and I said, "Why don't you do it?" They're like, we just want to put it out with you. I'm like, okay.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Asian Man Records is a DIY record label run by Mike Park. Park started a record label and began releasing music in 1989 under the name Dill Records, with the Asian Man label established in May of 96. And Asian Man is still running to this day, which is fucking awesome and crazy at the same time. Some of the label's releases came from bands like Slapstick, Less Than Jake, Alkaline Trio, Link 80, MU330 or MU330, however you fucking say it, The Broadways, Tuesday, and one of the current bands that I love that they have on the label now is Joyce Manor. If you haven't checked them out, you should totally do that after you listen to this interview. Then you can check it out. The last tour my band Lane Meyer went on was with the Lawrence Arms, and Lawrence Arms was fronted by Brendan from Slapstick because Slapstick broke up, and then they created Tuesday and the Broadways, and the Broadways broke up, and that created the Lawrence Arms and the Honor System, the Honor System. And luckily, we got to go on tour with the Lawrence Arms for almost 2 months, which was a really long time when you don't have Facebook or any management or a label, anything like that. But we were on tour, and I think we were in the middle of Illinois, and it was like some morning after we played and stayed at someone's house, and we all got drunk. And I got up at like 8 in the morning, walked out to the van to get something, and I saw Brendan was in their van talking on the phone, and I walked by whispers like, "Oh, who is that?" He's like, "Oh, it's Mike Park." And I was like, "Holy shit, can I say hi?" Or I think I said that, and he said, "Do you want to say hi?" Or I said hi. I think it's more that I had asked. So he hands me the phone, and I talked to Mike for like a minute, and it was just, "Hey, dude, how are you? Really like your label." That's it. And in my head, I was just geeking out. I was like, "Holy shit, this is like Mike Park." And the funny, just like small funny part of that story was that I gave the phone back to Brendan, just finished getting whatever I needed to out of the van. And I talked to him afterwards, and he was like, "Yeah, when you gave me the phone back, Mike said to me, like something like, yeah, I try to be very normal for that young man just so I can show you how fucked up I really am." And I just thought it was just like really funny, and Brendan thought it was funny. And I know I'm screwing the story up, but I just thought that was hilarious because it just it set the tone for me 20 years ago of just like this dude's personality was just very playful. And the thing I respect about him is, and we'll talk about this in the interview, the one thing I caught from just seeing what he did with his label, and if you follow him on Instagram or if you just follow him online anywhere or just hear him doing interviews, it just seems like he themed his life just to be surrounded by fun, and it all worked out. I know not everyone's life is 100% like it works out and you're just it's always constantly great. As far as a career goes, I mean, the guy can still play music. He does solo stuff. He'll go on tour with Alkaline Trio and just bring his acoustic guitar and play. He'll still play with Skankin Pickle or Bruce Lee Band or just one of his many bands. He's still putting out records that he loves. He still runs it from his parents' garage. I mean, that to me is just fucking awesome. And that's I'd say he's one of the many people that I learned about in my life at a young age where I thought to myself that I want to always do my own thing and never work for anyone else. So thank you, Mike, for being you. I forget how I got his email, but I reached out to him and he was just like, "Fuck yeah, let's do this," which was super awesome. And I got him on the phone, and this is what we talked about: the mod movement, Skankin Pickle, the formation of Dill Records, what did his parents think about him starting the label, putting out Alkaline Trio's God Damn It, did he sign bands with a handshake, Less Than Jake, running the label from his parents' garage, how the download era affected Asian Man, my band playing with Alkaline Trio the week God Damn It came out, which is fucking crazy, and a ton more. Before we begin, this week's episode is sponsored by my animation company, Drive80.com. If you're a marketing company in need of someone to just turn graphics into video and you can't do that in-house, then you can hire me to do it. A lot of these projects I do lately have been taking me anywhere from like 1 to 4 hours, and they're just real simple things because you already have the stuff designed, you have the layered files, you send it to me and say, hey, we need a 1080 by 1080 or a 1920 by 1080. We're going to use this on Facebook to market some stuff or some shit. And I'm like, great, here you go. And I say, now pay me. So there's that. And if you'd like to support the podcast directly without having to hire my company to help me live and survive, then you can just donate as little as $1 a month through Patreon by going to thiswasthescene.com. And at the top of the page, just click on the button that says bonus material. And if you don't want to do $1 a month, which just equals $12 a year, which you're going to spend $12 this week anyway, so why not do it on this fucking podcast and stretch it out? You can also donate one time by clicking the donate button and donate whatever you want to. It's very helpful. And thank you to all the people who have donated. That's been super fucking great to keep this thing alive. Also, I want to give a shout out to a review I've gotten for the podcast. This is by Swiss Dog, double S, double G. I love this podcast! Exclamation point. So many great bands came from the Jersey scene back in the day. It's a must listen. Thank you, Swiss Dog. I appreciate you writing that on December 24th, 2018. The day before Christmas, you took time out to write that. That's super fucking awesome. I love you. You're great. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Thanks, man, for giving me some time to chat about the late 90s.
Sounds good.
Now, what town are you in again? Or what city, or what do you call it out there?
San Jose.
Okay.
But I'm in a suburb, Montecito. It's just like a town of 20,000 people, but it's San Jose.
Did you grow up there?
Yes, I came here, I believe I was 9 when we moved here from San Jose proper. So I've always been in San Jose.
Is there like a different... I talked to Adam from Link 80. He's close to there, isn't he?
He grew up in Gilroy. It's a little...
Yeah.
It's close. It's about 17 miles south. It's like a farming community, or originally it was. It's garlic capital also of the world.
Oh, really?
Yes. They have a garlic festival. They were one of the first people to introduce garlic ice cream. Pretty cool.
So many weird festivals these days. Cool. Well,
that's an old school festival. That's been around for a long time. Yes.
Is garlic ice cream good?
40 years, I think they've been doing it, or longer. Anyway.
Jesus. I hope. God. Have you tried garlic ice cream?
I have. It's great.
Really? I can't.
You just add sugar to anything, it's going to be good, and make it into an ice cream. Well, let's think about it. They have like, I know there's like meat ice creams, like steak flavored ice cream and French fry flavored ice creams. You could put anything. I remember when it came out, I thought this is ridiculous, but it's good.
It's like the salmon ice cream that people make too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, you think, that's disgusting, but I bet it's good.
Yeah, it's like on those chef shows where they have 3 ingredients. It's like salmon, nails, and basil.
Perfect. Sounds like a dream ice cream combination.
All right, so I don't want to talk about ice cream the whole time because I know you have things to do. But yeah, so everyone listening, Mike Park owns Asian Man Records. Do you have a partner with Asian Man?
No.
No? And
I have an employee.
You have one employee?
But not a partner in the business, no.
Has this been the same employee since you started?
No, we've gone through stages. So now we're in year 23.
Wow.
Everybody who's worked here has worked at least 3 years at the minimum. So it was a woman named Mia who worked here for about 7 years, and then came Skylar. Skylar was here about 5 years. Then we had Bob from Shinobu who worked here about 4 years. Now we have Laszlo, who's been here about 2 years. And I did it for a few years at the beginning without any employees.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. But for anyone listening, the format that I've got going is solely on the late '90s. Even though I think you started, it said it was either your first band or the label started in '89. Even though you just told me the math was 23 years.
The first band, the first band was Skankin Pickle. Well, the
Yes.
first band that like did anything was Skankin Pickle, and that was '89.
Okay. So what I like to do is go back even further as I start all these interviews and really get to know. The first question is always like, what band or song got you just into music in general? It doesn't have to be ska, it doesn't have to be punk, just like where you first heard it and you're like, oh my God, I just really love listening to music because of this song or band.
Maybe like the Grease soundtrack or like American Graffiti soundtrack.
Yeah, like
I remember.
yeah, when you're, oh, I'm sorry, you were saying it. I thought you were
Yeah,
asking.
I think just having those on vinyl, and yeah, I would even say the American Graffiti soundtrack more than the Grease soundtrack. I would just because it had a lot of the classic songs from the '50s.
Yeah.
I've just I love that record and I love the song. So that was probably my first like, hey, this is cool. I really like music, and I would just sit by the turntable, and which was a gigantic turntable, but which is still I'm looking at it right now. It's one of those turntables from the early '70s that are like a decorative piece that's about 10 feet long,
Oh my God.
and I would just listen to records.
Was this now who had played that? Was this did your parents buy the record and were they were playing in the house or had you seen the movie as a
Now,
kid?
it, it was my sister. My sister was a couple years older, and so she had either purchased it or my parents purchased it for her. So she was probably 9, and I was or 8, and I was 5.
Okay.
So it was definitely her. And then another record was Simon and Garfunkel, "Bridge Over Troubled Water," which I think my parents purchased, and I would listen to that a lot.
Now, what did you like? What was it about it? Was it the melody? Was it the lyrics? Was it the music? Like what brought you in? Like kind of captured you?
Definitely melody, because like lyrics at that age, I didn't really understand what was going on. I just liked, whether I realized it or not, it was probably the harmonies of Simon and Garfunkel.
Okay.
And especially, and then also with all the songs from the '50s and that American Graffiti soundtrack, also a lot of harmonies. And I think it was just something that sounded pleasant to my ears.
So, what age were you when you got into like punk music or ska? Because you're a big, from anything that I've read or seen online, you're always associated with ska. So was that, and I've talked to bands before who were like a big emo band, but they were huge hardcore fans. So like what genre of like, quote unquote punk brought you in that direction?
Well, I saw a movie called Dance Craze. It's a movie about the British two-tone movement. Um, I saw it in a theater, and it's the first and only time I've seen people dance during a movie. Um, and I didn't know what ska was. I understood the bands at the time were actually was quite successful in commercial radio. So Madness had a song that was a
Yeah.
hit, which was Our House, which is not a ska song, but still it was a huge song. The English Beat had hits that were just on radio. And so I knew these bands, I just didn't know what ska was. So after seeing that movie, I went to the record store and I bought Bad Manners Class with a K.
Okay.
Then I just started getting into ska like crazy. So this is probably 85, maybe 86.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I remember that. That's like MTV was it 86 when MTV came out or 83?
I don't even know.
Yeah, because
I would
I just
say,
remember, yeah, I remember
because I,
seeing like Madness, that their video, because I grew up in the '80s too, and I remember that like Madness came out in the Clash, and they had all the videos out as well.
oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think 83, because I definitely remember MTV even like my freshman year in high school. So that would have been 83. But then, yeah, so after seeing Dance Craze in the theaters, buying Bad Manners Class, I just started getting into the subculture. Like there were a couple kids at school that were like rude boys, would dress mod, drove scooter Vespas, and I started getting into like, oh, what is this? And started learning about the history of ska, and I was into it. At the time, a lot of the two-tone bands were on their way out, or I was too young to go to the shows. So I didn't get to see. I did see Madness play like a big festival, but I didn't get to see any of the bands that playing in the small clubs. But we had two bands from LA that were up and coming. That were the band Fishbone and the Untouchables.
Okay,
they kind of carried this next wave of ska, especially the Untouchables. They were very mod oriented. That was their look, and you would go to these shows in the 80s and it would just be, let's say, 1,000 cap room, 50% are either skinheads or mods, and there's 50 Vespas lined up outside. It was really cool.
What was the Vespa thing about? Was that a big ska thing?
Oh yeah. So the movie Quadrophenia, which is a movie about mods, that's how like that Vespa culture, I don't know if it started it, but that definitely influenced like mainstream in terms of America. It was happening in England. It's probably happening all over the world too. But yeah, Vespas and ska go hand in hand. If you even look at like some of the early Mighty Mighty Boss Tones records, you can see there's Vespas in those photos.
That's so funny. I never knew there was like a correlation there.
I mean, ska is very different nowadays in terms of just like ska now is just fun music. It was very scene oriented back in the day in terms of dress. Like you had to be, everything you wore had to be perfect, or people just made fun of you. Like if it wasn't like an authentic, like your suit had to be from the 60s. Everything, like you had to have monkey boots or Doc Martens. It just had to be perfect.
Did you have to have multiple suits, or was it just like you could have one and wear it constantly to shows without getting shit on?
Well, no one would know. So have one suit
like,
on
Jim,
it.
you're wearing the same checkered pants as last time. He's like, God damn it.
But if you look like the early specials, all their promo shots, it's just like they just look perfect. That's the example of a band that just had so much style, and that's how I would wear vintage suits to every show in the 80s. I mean, I remember seeing like original Red Hot Chili Peppers with Hellel, Jack Irons on drums, and I wore a suit because that's how I dressed, no matter what the show was.
Was this during high school, you said too, like your senior year? Was this junior, senior year?
Junior, senior year, yeah.
So like, did you have a group of friends in school that you kind of had your own? I mean, I always consider any kind of punk group or ska group or what a hardcore group was always, they were their own thing, outcast from the typical jocks and cheerleaders and stuff. Did you have a group of friends in school that you would hang out with in school and then go to shows with?
Yes. And one of them we would go on to start Skankin Pickle with, this guy named Lars. Yeah, we just had this group of band nerds that were into punk and ska. You know, we loved punk too.
Yeah.
We loved early Black Flag and Circle Jerks, 7 Seconds.
And that was all local back then for you, right?
Well, we were lucky that we did get a lot of shows in the 80s. There was a punk collective in San Jose. And, you know, of course, way before the internet, but there was a hotline. It was just 408, which is our area code, 93-PUNK-O. And you just call it. Just tell you what shows are happening.
No shit. That's awesome.
And so it was great. They brought in great shows. At the convention center in San Jose, they would rent one of the banquet rooms. And that was my first show, was Social Distortion in 85.
Wow.
And we were lucky to get a lot of great shows. I saw The Faction with Steve Caballero's band, Adolescence. This is all like in the 80s. Agent Orange. So many bands, 7 Seconds, list goes on, but it was a great thing to have in San Jose at the time, and which is funny because we've regressed so much since that time in the 80s. This giant city, which is ninth largest in the U.S., we have no all-age venue that exists here that does national acts.
Really?
It's unbelievable. We haven't had an all-age venue in nearly 20 years in this city.
What was typically the all age? I think we played in San Jose. There was some. Yeah, it was Los Gatos.
It's an outhouse. So the teens. So there's a lot of
It was a teen
makeshift.
center.
There's a teen center behind the high school that would do some shows. So every show since I'd say late 90s
Yeah.
has been in makeshift venues that aren't typical. Go in and there's a bar and there's a stage. It's just people renting out stuff. Like it's crazy.
Well, Jersey
You
was
don't-
like that. Jersey, all we could do was rent Knights of Columbus, Legion halls, churches, and things like that. That's how we would go see music. And then the clubs were kind of if a big band came through, we would go to Roseland or something like that.
City Gardens, though.
I never, I grew up in northern Jersey, and I never even knew what City Gardens was until I started doing these interviews, and everyone talks about it. But I wouldn't drive to Trenton because it was an hour and a half, and I was like, "Fuck that."
Got it.
Yeah, Jersey is very small, so it's not. I mean, L.A. or California is gigantic, so.
Yeah, it is. It sucks. Like for me to go to any show that I want to see, in most cases, I have to drive to San Francisco. Especially all the Asian man bands that play, I always have to go to San Francisco. It's terrible. I hate driving.
How far are you from San Francisco? Like an hour?
Hour drive.
Oh, that sucks.
That's with no traffic.
Oh, yeah, that's true. If you take up 280, I see. Yeah, I'm like literally looking on a map right now, so I can see all the places you're like mentioning. What was so I definitely want to talk about Asian Man, but Skankin' Pickle is a huge part of that because like how did Skankin' Pickle start? Like how old were you guys? Did it start in high school or did you guys graduate and then start the band?
We started it out of high school. My first year in college, I was just going through junior college, and I was in a biology class, and I was just doodling in the textbook. There was like a page of like foods that preserve well, and there was like cucumbers, and I just drew arms and legs on it. And then the guy next to me said, "Oh, it's a Skankin' Pickle." And I just remember going, "Oh, I'm going to use this for a band name one day." That person who said it was a guy named Shannon Smith. His dad is Kurtwood Smith, who was Red on that 70s show.
Oh,
and
wow.
Also, yes. So he came up with the name, but it wasn't until the next year that I started Skankin' Pickle. Like, I think early or late 88 is when we started practicing. And then our first show was April 28th, 1989, San Jose State University, Washburn Hall.
This is awesome. Did you, when you started, like as a kid, I'm going to jump back for a second, like as a little kid, did you have any dreams of being in a band when you got older? Or did that happen when you started listening to ska later on in like high school?
It's when I saw Fishbone. After I saw Fishbone, then I was like, oh, I want to do this. Fishbone to this day is the greatest band that has ever existed. Best live band. It's especially if you saw them in the 80s, there's nobody, not even Bad Brains, could touch Fishbone. Fishbone was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's hard to, like, they're still great, but they're all in their 50s. It's only so much energy you can put off versus when you're in your 20s, early 20s. And that band was unfriggin' believable.
Do you remember when you saw them in Back to the Beach?
Oh yeah.
I was a kid and I didn't know what ska was, and I said this in another interview. I thought they were saying that the song was called Jamaica Scott, and I was like, as a kid, I was like, what the fuck what does that mean? And I didn't realize at that time it was the guys from Fishbone. I think was it the whole band or was just the one dude who's
It was the whole band, and they were doing a cover of an Annette Funicello song from the 60s. She had released that song. It's an old Jamaican standard, but she did a cover of it in the 60s, and so they redid it again.
Oh, okay. That's too funny. Yeah, it was my first time I ever heard of Fishbone was in that movie, and then later on I saw them. I was like, oh, these guys are an actual band. That's crazy. And they're like, they just seemed like the guy was just like running around on the beach with the brown suit on and like the mohawk.
Yeah,
He was
that's
just like
Angelo.
looked like he was nuts. I loved it.
Yeah, he is nuts. He's an awesome. I mean, that guy should be even. God, I can go on Fishbone for hours. That band is unbelievable. And they influenced everybody, every band from the third wave of ska, at least from California, and then even like people like Prince or Paul Schaefer. They all know Fishbone. Like Prince had said, like Fishbone's the greatest live band he'd ever seen.
Have you ever gotten a chance to meet them, like personally?
Oh yeah, I put out two poetry albums from Angelo
Oh,
on
nice.
Asian Man.
Oh, wow.
So
Did he approach you or did you approach him?
I can't remember. It's been
Okay.
so long.
I just remember if that was the case, like if you wanted something like, holy shit, dude, can I do this for you? And just being like intimidated by that conversation.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been so long. But I definitely remember just like how cool it was to be able to talk to him on the phone and get to that kind of level of being a friend.
Yeah.
Even though I haven't seen him in quite a while now, but it's just like the high school me being, wow, I can't believe this is happening.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's awesome.
That's the same with Kevin Seconds too. Like
Yeah.
someone had said in high school you'd be putting out Kevin Seconds records, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Yeah, because you put out the split with him and Matt Skiba, right?
Yeah, but I also put out 3 of his own solo records too.
Oh my God.
We've been around a long time. We've put out over 140 records, so it's hard to keep track of all of them.
The 340 you said?
Let me look exactly. I'm going to go look at my wall of releases.
Yeah, because are you in your in the office right now? Asian Man office?
Yes,
Which
we
is
are.
your parents' garage.
Yes,
That's amazing.
we have 345 releases right now. A bunch of them are in production right now, but 345.
Okay, so you start Skankin' Pickle. How quickly did that band start to get a following? Like, how quickly did you notice it?
I think it was pretty quick. We were very different. We were really shunned by the ska community actually because we were mixing different styles.
Hmm.
Our first album was called Ska Funk Rasta Punk, so we would blend elements of funk, punk, reggae, and of course ska. And so it was there's a lot of purists back in the 80s,
Yeah.
and they didn't like it when you did that. I think you could play like if you blended maybe like soul or reggae or dub, it worked better. But the funk and punk, it was hard. Like we were even like Operation Ivy was less shunned than we were. The ska community embraced them way more than they did us.
You guys were coming up at the same time?
We started a couple months before they ended. But we were playing Gilman too, so a lot of those Gilman kids would say, "This is the next Operation Ivy," like as Skankin' Pickle, because we were playing punk too. But the actual ska scene, did not like us at all in the Bay Area.
That's fucking wild. So like, how long? So how am I going to phrase this? How soon after taking off and playing did you decide you wanted to? Because Dill was the first iteration of Asian Man, right?
Yes.
Now, do you consider the over 340 records a part of Dill, or is that you consider them separate?
Totally separate. If Dill was included, we'd add another, I don't know, 10 releases. It wasn't a lot. It was mostly just to release Skankin' Pickle stuff.
Okay, so is that basically why you started the label, to just release your own records?
Exactly. It was just like, I don't know exactly how old you are, but back in
39.
Okay, so back in the 80s, early 90s, if you're in a band, you would make demo tapes versus, I think maybe you were like CDR age, I think.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Okay, so we just came up with a fictitious name, and we picked Dill Records because we thought it was funny.
Now when you so you're doing this and so you guys are playing shows and you're like, screw it, I'll put a record label out. Was there any point during this where, because you're out of high school, your parents were on you of, hey, are you going to go to school and you're going to go in that direction, or were they just like, hey, just we got your back, do what you want?
Oh hell no, they were not supportive at all. At all, they wanted me to go back to school. My mom would cry often when I would go on tour, or that the idea that this is what I was going to try to do for a living.
Yeah.
She was not having it. They were not happy at all. And the only thing that changed it is when somehow Korean press picked up on my story. And so like a couple TV stations came and did interviews with me, and then a couple big Korean newspapers did articles on me. And so like in the Korean, like older generation culture, they like to brag about their kids. And so her friends saw it either on TV or in newspaper print. So somehow it was like, oh,
you're validated now.
Yeah, it was weird. But then I started making money too, so that didn't hurt either.
Now, did you? What was the process like when you first threw yourself into it? Like, were you having a conversation with the bandmates, and you guys were like, "Oh, we want to put a record out," and you said, "Oh, I'll just screw it, I'll do it, I'll just figure it out," or did you have, leading up to that point, did you kind of have a little bit of an inkling of, oh, I want to start a label one day, and then it just turned into, hey, we need a record label. You're like, oh, I had this idea, I'll just do it with us.
No, I had no idea that this is what I was going to do. We just followed the path of what other bands did. You put out a tape, and we sold that tape, and we sold probably 3,000 of those tapes, this original 12-song demo. And so it was like, oh, you can actually make a little money at this.
What was your split? How did you do the split between? If you don't mind me, I don't. Maybe I'm out of line, but
amongst the band,
yeah, like how did you? Is it weird to be putting out your own band's releases and then say, well, I got to take a cut for the label, and I got to do
it wasn't like that. I mean, it was a collective. So Skankin, Dill Records was all of us.
Okay.
Even though I did all the work, I was just I feel like in every band there's one business guy.
Yeah.
Who's more business oriented, and that was me. So I just kind of took care of the accounting and all that stuff. But we were actually offered a label deal early on by Reckless Records, which was a big label. They put out, like, they might be Giants. They had put out the Untouchables. We turned it down because we were. This is funny. We turned it down because we saw an MC Hammer interview. He was talking about him turning down a major label, because the profit margin of doing it yourself is way better. And then we were also into we were romanticized about the labels like Discord and SST.
Yeah.
And like Greg Ginn had done SST, and Ian was doing Discord. And we're like, oh, it's kind of cool. We'll just do it ourselves. So it just kind of progressed from that point of, okay, well, let's see if we can do it. But at the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, or I didn't have any idea that this was something I was going to do. We just put out a tape, it sold, and then the next step was, okay, well, let's record a record.
Did it stress you out at all when you were first doing it, or did it seem kind of fun?
It seemed fun because it was just fresh, and I didn't know what I was doing. So we released our first record. We didn't have a distributor. I didn't know what I was doing. But here's a story, like how different the times are now.
Yeah.
So 91, we came out with an album called Ska Funk Rastapunk. I went to LA, and with a red wagon, I'm not kidding, I walked to every store. I walked about 13 miles in a day to see if I could put the record on consignment. This is when record stores existed, especially in LA, so many record stores. I'd say 90% of the record stores just flat out bought it without consigning it, which is crazy. And that's how, because ska was so underground at that time, it always, and I'm sure it's still true today, I feel like the underground movement if it's underground and it's deemed more cool, it just has this more what am I trying to say?
Kind of like an aura, or like I think I know what you're saying. It's kind of like
It's just like,
yeah.
yeah, it was just like kind of this cool, like only people in the know. I mean, even today, if you say ska, some people are like, "What's that?"
Really?
Oh yeah,
Well, I guess that would make sense because the younger, oh God, oh my Jesus Christ, I'm totally aging myself. The younger crowd, in the EDM crowd now, I'm sure they would be a little like
or,
confused.
or even yeah, just every. Let's say if we went like to Times Square and the people hanging out at in front of the Today Show, if we just asked every person, "Do you know what ska is?" I bet more than 50% would say, "I have no idea," unless you said, "Well, do you know?" Then you'd have to go, "Do you know No Doubt?" They'd be like, "Oh yeah," but ska itself, unless you listen to music, I don't think a lot of people know. Like, I mean, or a big music fan, I don't think they know the word.
You could probably get more sales 'cause you're like, oh, it's this new thing. Like, oh, I want to be first in line. Let me buy it.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, going back to like when I was pulling that wagon,
Oh yeah.
it was just, it was a very, um, it was just like a cool thing. Like that was the scene. Like that's when it was still like the Vespas, mods, skinheads. You would go to a ska show, and at least half the crowd were either skinheads or mods, and it just that it was just an underground thing. So people just buy it. So I mean, when I went record shopping, I bought the Toasters' first album, Ska Boom, based on the album cover and the fact that it was called Ska Boom.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is this? And I bought it and I loved it. And so, based on our album cover, these record store owners knew, like, oh, this will sell.
Oh
And
yeah.
I sold hundreds out of that wagon.
You know what's
Without,
funny? I think that people dismiss the fact that you could probably still do that to get your something into a store. I mean, granted, there's really no records. Actually, where I live, there's a couple vinyl stores that are open that survive. But I think people just they think that like they have to email someone or just give them like digital tracks. But I think that could still work.
well, I think if you went, especially to your local store, let's say I was just in a band, whatever, a local band, and I went to the local stores here and I said, could I consign it? I'm sure they'd say yes.
Oh yeah.
It's just at this point in my life, I, I don't have the energy to do that. But if I was a young kid, I'd be going to every single store in the area and trying to get it in on consignment at least.
Oh yeah. It's like I mean that's what MC Hammer did. He was selling it out of his trunk.
Yeah,
And he made like shit ton of money doing that.
yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. I pulled that wagon, and then we got offered a distribution deal. This company called CD Presents, and so our record started getting distroed, and then they, of course, didn't pay us, and we lost $13,000,
Oh my God.
and which is hard for a young band, but it got the wheels moving, and we had gotten a booking agent, and were able to tour, and kind of was a mobile distribution because we were selling our records when we played in these different cities all around the world.
What were the steps? I figured every question you had was just presented to you on the spot, right? So you're like, okay, I got to put this out. Well, where are we going to record? All right, there's the first question. Where are we going to go? So you find a studio, you record it. They give you the masters, and you go, well, where the hell do I get this pressed? So then you got to find a place to get pressed. Then you're like, shit, now we got to get the artwork done as well. So were all these things just kind of presented to you along the way? And after the first round, you're like, whoa, okay, well, now I know the process for the next one and the next one and the next. So it wasn't so bad.
Exactly. It was just like you tackled each step as it came.
Was there any in the beginning? Well, it was like the one that was the worst.
I can't. I mean, off the top of my head, nothing comes to mind. I think it was just all an adventure.
Yeah.
You just kind of took it in stride. It was all fun because it was new. I was so young. In '89, when we started the band, I was 19 years old, so everything was just fun.
Yeah. It seems like you kind of just from knowing Asian Man for so long and seeing interviews and things like that, and I'm going to jump forward a little bit and go backwards, but it just seems like you kind of established this. What would be like if you had like a mission statement in life? It feels like to me you'd say fun. Like it seems like you just kind of like to try to just have fun and not take things too seriously. Would that be kind of
That's
correct?
100% correct. And it's funny you say that because I was thinking about that earlier today. I was trying to think of some tour ideas for next year, and I just like, oh, well, I'm gonna do this city because I can go here to eat, or I'm gonna play this city because it has
Awesome.
close to the beach.
Yeah.
Um, it is about fun. I mean, Asian Man is so unconventional. We're a strange label. We don't have any desire to be a big label. Like, I don't want to. I mean, this is. You have a better chance of winning the lottery than doing what I'm doing. What Asian Man does makes no sense.
But I think it does make sense because I think the problem with people in general is that it's like life kind of gives you this roadmap. Like when your parents got mad at you for not going to school, they get stressed out because they think if you don't go on that path, they can't have this, they don't have this clear vision of what that other path is. But then there's the people out there that just go, well, I don't see it, but it just feels right to me. And I want to wake up and be happy. So I'm going to kind of do this and do my own thing. And I think people gravitate towards that. And I think a lot of people did that with your label because also you put out really good records. But I think they caught on to your vibe.
I hope so. That's all I could think of is, somehow it moved people.
Yeah, I mean,
No
people like being inspired, man. I think that they see someone else doing something like, oh wow, that looks like fun. I want to do that. I want to support them. But oh wow, then I actually get value out of this because I get to buy all these records. And for me, it was like, God damn it, and Slapstick, and Broadways and Tuesdays, and Honor System. All these bands that I would buy. I mean, I know you're saying not a big label, but I would think that back then, even now, if I say your name. I think people considered it a big enough label but it wasn't like that they respected.
Yeah, I think you've hit it exact. We're not a big label in terms of we have no staff. We don't do anything that bigger indies do. We don't do tour support. We don't do ads. We don't send stuff to radio. I do nothing.
Oh wow.
All we do is social media, and that's it. And I tell the band straight up, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And so there's no like, wow, you promised this, you promised that. Actually, I've tried to talk bands out of putting out records with me on numerous occasions. Like, maybe I'll catch fire. They were offered a major label deal, and I said, why don't you do it? They're like, we just want to put it out with you. I'm like, okay.
It was funny. I actually watched the video of you talking about that right before we got on the phone, and it was just funny to hear your response when Maybe I'll Catch Fire came out, and you were just picking up the phone. It was just like ringing off the hook for orders, and you just were like, "Is this for Alkaline Trio?" They're like, "Yeah." You're like, "Okay, we'll do the order."
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, I remember Dan Andrano was here visiting, and I was like, "What's this?" And he's like, "Wow, that's crazy." But it was, and it was so many people from Illinois, which was cool. I just love the local band like support. I love when bands can play their hometown and everyone supports them.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's not as strong these days, but maybe I'm just crazy. I just remember back in the 90s, like you'd just have your local, you'd go on tour and then you'd get home and play your local show, which would just be gigantic, and
oh yeah,
every feel right again.
I just did an interview with Chris from Braid, and we were talking about the Chicago scene, and we were just talking about like how much pride people have coming from there. Even Brendan's interview, he talks about it too. Like there's something in the water there.
Dude, there is.
It's crazy.
The years of touring, every time we would hit Chicago, it was just guaranteed to be a good show, and the merch numbers would always be the best in Chicago.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was in a band that no one even really knew, and we'd show up there. There'd be 300 kids at the fireside. We'd sell like $100 or so worth of merch, and that was huge for us. We're like, holy shit, this is the greatest place ever. Then we go and play a suburb, and it was the same thing. We're like, man, we got to keep coming back here.
Yeah, the suburb shows are great there too. It's crazy.
So you started Dill, you're putting out records. You had so you had 10 different releases or 10 different bands that were on Dill.
10 different releases. So we had 3 Skankin Pickle records. We had a band called the Tantra Monsters from Hawaii, the Rudiments. We put out MUT30. Originally, Pezcore, Less Than Jake was on Dill.
That's right.
Originally,
Wasn't
trying to think what else.
I swear I could tell. I swear there was another big band because Less Than Jake was huge to me back in like '96 and late '90s.
Right.
I swear there was another band. I mean, you obviously know it's your label.
Off of Dill, I don't think so. I think Less Than Jake. Well, Slapstick originally came out on Dill too.
Okay.
So then when I started Asian Man, then I brought those titles over.
So what brought on going from Dill to Asian Man? Like, why did you switch over or drop Dill and then do Asian Man?
Because Dill was a collective, even though I did all the work. And so when money started coming in, then it's money changes everything always. So
Oh yeah.
in this case, as a collective, money was coming in. I was doing all the work. People wanted in, and I was like, I'm gonna start Asian Man, and so that's why it happened. Also, the band, other people in the collective was Skankin Pickle, and so other band members were like, "Well, let's do this band." I'm like, "No, this is not going to sell." And so I saw the internal fighting early, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to nip it right now, and I'm going to start Asian Man. And so I left Dill, and Dill was blowing up at the time. Everything was selling. Scott was so big. So they probably had a worth of at least $250,000 at the time.
Whoa.
That was gone within a year. They folded.
Okay, so they kept Dill. So Dill, okay.
And so it was gone. They weren't really, when Scott was the biggest, they were releasing like not street punk, more like bands like that. I don't know if you know, like the Mission punk scene in San Francisco, like bands like Hickey, the Bar Feeders. They're putting out bands like that who are like these good bands, but it just didn't make sense. Like, why would you put those out when Ska's so big and you're known as a ska label? But anyway.
Well, it sounded like you definitely had a business sense as much as you were talking about you having fun and things like that. But it seems like, and I remember I talked to Adam from Link 80, and he was telling me when they were going to put out their second CD with Adam or Ryan singing, and then that was coming out at the same time when Alkaline Trio was doing Maybe I'll Catch Fire, and they wanted to call Maybe I'll Catch Fire like Asshole? Shitty. And then Link 80 wanted to call their record something like with a really bad name. Hella, that was it. And you called them, and you're like, why the hell? No, these are awful. These are awful album names. Why would you do this?
Both bands, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is insane.
Was it an instinct of knowing, or was it just from doing things in repetition where you're like, I know what works because I see what's working, what's not working?
No, it's all instinct. And it's obviously it's not always correct, but I just feel like, I do feel like I know it all. Like if I see a band live, I'm like, oh yeah, well they should do this and they should do that.
Well, it sounds like you're also tapped into like.
Right.
Well, it sounds like also I think if you have a passion about something like you did with the ska scene or music scene, I think that also is a part of it because then you're going on that instinct as well, right? You're kind of going from an authentic level mixed in with business.
I guess, but again, it's not always right. Like we were on a booking agency with this. Blink 182 was on the same agency as us, and the agent asked. This is when Blink was just starting out. They're like, "Hey, can you bring out this band? Let them open up for you guys for 6 shows." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I remember like watching them the first time. I'm like, "Man, this band is horrible." And I called our agent. I'm like, "This band is horrible. Why are you working with them?" He's like, "Oh, I think they're gonna do really well." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And thankfully he didn't listen to me because obviously they blew up. And then even like when the agent, this guy named Rick Bondi, when he retired, Blink gave him 1% for life. So he's still making money off them.
Wow. Yeah, but they were awful live when they started. Like we loved Cheshire Cat when we saw them live. I'm like, these guys are these guys are shit live. I mean, they had like I mean, you know, and this is just my opinion, but when I saw them play, they had Scott on drums, but I never thought he was that tight. They were never tight until they got Travis, and then he was like the tight thing, but they were still a mess.
Flops.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was just potty mouth humor. It still is. It's not my thing. It's
yeah.
just I remember, but that's just an example of like, oh, I totally thought this band. There's no way this band could do well, and they became one of the biggest bands in rock and roll.
I know. I was watching some documentary on them the other day. I was like, Jesus Christ. I would think it was more on Tom DeLonge just being super engulfed in aliens. Um, so on Asia Man, so was your first band Less Than Jake then? Because you went
Yep.
from, so was Pezcore, did that always stay on Dill or did that transfer over to Asia Man?
Transferred over to Asian Man.
How did you get them? How did you get the guys to let you do that? Like
I
Dill?
just asked. Well, we had no contracts within Dill.
Okay.
It was the band's choice, so I just asked Les and Jake. I'm going to do this. Can we do that? And they said okay. That was it.
Like, what was your rules of signing a band back then? If you're like, because I know you just do a handshake, right? You don't do contracts.
Yeah, no contracts. I just wanted them to be nice guys, nice people.
I love it.
That was it. It has it. God, I don't want to call people out, so I shouldn't. I was going to start naming people that I didn't like. But it didn't work out where I was like, oh, God, this person's a jerk.
I was going to say, like, did it ever, like, backfire on you? But it sounds like it did.
Well, not as a whole band, but there would be, even if there's just one member I didn't like, it would sour the relationship. And that's why I don't do contracts, is because I feel like if I'm not happy or the band's not happy, why work with them? That's why I don't understand like a label like Victory Records where every band hates them. It's just like,
oh yeah,
what is this fun? This looks like a nightmare. Like, why would you want to be a dick? I just don't get it.
I've heard so many like horror stories. We don't have to sit here and talk shit about them, but I mean, I did. You'd hear it, and then I read some interview. I was listening to Lead Singer Syndrome. It's another podcast. This guy from Silverstein does it. It's awesome, and he was talking to someone because he was on Victory, and he was like, "Oh my god, that guy was awful." I think even Adam from in his Link 81 was like, "Yeah, this guy was just like not down." And I think there's something to the fact that you just did a handshake. I think from the way I would see it is that I think it would create more of a stable relationship because you wouldn't feel like you're handcuffed to something, and it's like there's a trust built on that.
That's how I feel. Like it's not about business, it's about relationships. Like I want to be, more than anything, I don't care if your album sells one record or a million. Well, I actually do, but in theory, I just want to work with good people and stay friends with them. I don't want it to be about business. Like, oh, if your album doesn't sell enough, then I'm not friends with them. And I see that, like labels, like if your band is huge, like, oh, they're so nice to them. But as soon as they want to leave to like a major label or do something different, it's like, oh, they're betraying us. Like, who cares?
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree.
You've got the back catalog. What's the big deal?
Is it true that you still have that Alkaline Trio kept they kept all their first two releases on Asian Man? Like they haven't brought them over to I don't even know what label they're on now. Yeah.
Okay, no, we have 3 records. We have the first 2 full lengths, and we have a compilation, self-titled compilation.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, they just took me on tour 2 months ago. I was on tour with them for 25 days. I talk to Dan almost every day. They're just friends. I officiated Matt's wedding.
That's awesome.
I've officiated so many people, so many bands' weddings that I've worked with. I've officiated Jeff Rosenstock's wedding, Sean from AJJ's wedding. So it's all family.
Yeah, that's great.
Even like when Jeff Rosenstock, when his first album was going to go out on Side One Dummy, for We Cool, that record was supposed to come out on Asian Man. We were getting ready to put it out, and then Jeff called me. He's like, "Hey, listen, I got this opportunity. what do you think? I'm like, yeah, do it. I'm gonna do it. Try something different.
Yeah.
Like, they can bring you to another level, and it worked out great because they did. They had a great publicist staff, and they got him everywhere.
I literally have never even heard of this guy until you just said that. I know it's probably awful.
Jeff Rosenstock, you got to know Jeff Rosenstock. He's like one of the biggest like DIY icons right now. No, he's a great guy though. Jeff,
I'm off. People are listening, probably like, "What the hell?" I'm like, I don't care.
he did that punk collective, Bomb the Music Industry.
Okay.
Out of Long Island. But yeah, great guy. Great guy. The real deal in every way, shape, and form.
So who was the second band? Was that Slapstick?
Slapstick was the second band, yeah.
So I was watching that interview you did. It's like I'm watching interview before interview, but you how did you hear about them?
We would tour. That's how I found Les and Jake. They opened up for Skankin Pickle. Slapstick opened up for Skankin Pickle. Les and Jake opened up for Skankin Pickle. So it was what an A&R job. You get to go on, you tour with your band, you see these great bands opening for you. I'm like, hey, do you want me to put out your record? Or I think I called Les and Jake. They gave me their demo tape, and I remember listening to it in the van on tour with Skankin Pickle, and all the other members trashing it. I'm like, you guys are crazy. This is great. And then I just called them. I left a message, and then they called back. I can't remember who called back, but one of them did, and we started working with them.
That's so wild. What record did Les and Jake? What was their last record with you? Was it Pezcore or is it the Loser Kings and Things We Don't Understand?
Loser King was on No Idea Records.
Oh, that's right, No Idea.
So Pezcore was our only release.
And you still have that, right, as a release?
No, they actually took it back, and it was a sore subject with me and Les and Jake.
Oh, okay. We don't have to talk about that.
No, it's fine now. They're great. I mean, I love those guys. It's just it was at the time I was pissed off, like pissed beyond pissed. I felt like I can't believe it, but they owned the rights, they owned the masters, and they were being smart about business.
What year was that?
That they took it back? God, I can't even remember.
Well, because you got to think of that, like, because I mean, I was going to ask you about Napster and downloading all those things. I mean, when that started to happen, was it around that era? Can you remember?
I feel like it was at least 15 years ago ish.
Yeah, that's kind of around the time.
Yeah, but it's fine. I played a show with them in Japan like 5 years back, and it was good to see everybody.
So how did you you started Asian Man, and then how quickly did you start working did you put it in your parents' garage?
Oh, it was first day. It was parents' garage.
And this is when they were cool with it, or this is after the interviews and all that. Then you're kind of validated.
It was at the beginning. I mean,
okay.
I'm still their son, so they still want to help me. We had a 2-car garage, so I just used one side.
And it's still their house, right? They still live there?
Well, my dad passed away a while ago. Like, gosh, it's been so long now, 20 years ago. Okay. But my mom's still here. Yeah,
that's wild. So she must love that because you get to come over all the time, and she gets to say hi.
She makes me lunch every day. She's probably gonna. You might even be able to hear her. She'll yell my name. So, and it's about time actually. So I'll be hearing my name called very soon.
How are you doing on time, by the way? We're almost at an hour, and I have like a bunch of questions, but I don't want to take up your day.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when my mom calls me.
Okay. Your ham sandwich is ready, Michael.
It's way more than that. It's always gourmet, like some great Korean dish.
Oh, that's badass.
Yes.
So what did a typical day look like in the Asian Man office back in the 90s?
Just a lot of mail order, and all physical mail. It's just we'd go to the post office to our P.O. box, and it'd just be a stack, at least like a foot thick of letters, and it was awesome. It was like Christmas. You just open up letters. So many people would send cash too. It was crazy.
Wow.
I'd always be so amazed, like, wow, people really trust the post office.
Yeah, it was always like send. I remember like CDs where for stickers or anything, send a check or well hitting cash to this address.
Well hidden cash. I remember that for sure.
Yeah. Did you? So when how was it hiring your first employee? Like when did you decide that I need someone to help me out, and then you put an ad out, or was it a friend? You're like, hey, I really need some help. Do you want some extra cash?
Yeah, I think it was the keyboardist for Slow Gherkin. He was living with me at the time, and then he didn't have a job, so he started helping out, but he was terrible. So that didn't work out. And then I was at a San Jose State. I was going to be like a DJ for the college radio station, so I went to a bunch of meetings and then met some people there. And one of the guys like, "Hey, I'd like you to take volunteers." And I'm like, "Yeah." And so he'd come and just volunteer, and I'm like, "Oh, do you want to do mail order?" And so he started doing that. And then I met Mia she was dating someone in Slow Gherkin. And so that's how she came in. And then she was really good. And I just stuck with that. At the peak, we had 2 employees besides myself.
How soon after starting the label did you actually start making like where you thought it was good money?
Pretty quickly.
That's awesome.
It was really insane, to be honest. We started in '96. We picked up a distributor called Mordam. Mordam was one of the most sought after DIY like punk distributors. They ran as a collective. It was based in San Francisco. They represented Alternative Tentacles, Lookout Records, Kill Rock Stars, Sympathy for the Record Industry. So they had this great roster. So they would vote in new labels. So I got voted in, and then everything changed. The first month, I only had 4 releases our first month through distribution. Actually, there were 6 releases. It was Misfits of Ska 1 and 2, Less Than Jake, Slapstick, Link 80, Bruce Lee Band. Those 6 releases, I made $189,000.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, insane. Insane. That was another thing that just changed when my parents saw that. They're like, "What the hell just happened?"
But did you keep it just very simple though? Where you're like, cool, I have a nice padding in my bank account now, but I still just want to go to shows and I still want to tour in a band and I still just want to put records out.
Nothing has changed. Like I'm wearing clothes from the '90s still. I don't buy anything. Everything I buy is second. I live the most frugal lifestyle. I don't care about anything fancy. I don't go to fancy restaurants. I don't wear fancy clothes. I am a minimalist.
I love it.
Money means nothing to me. It's a necessary evil, but I don't care about it. I don't want it. I need it, but I don't want it. Oh, mom is calling. I'm going to go up and we can still talk. Let's see how long this lasts.
Sure. She's like, what are you get off the phone.
Yes.
Are you on like a new iPhone, by the way? Because the connection sounds amazing.
I'm on an old Android.
It's like a Motorola from the 90s.
It's actually a Samsung J7. I've had for at least 4 years now. I feel like it's going to be conking out one of these days.
That sounds so good.
My phone is getting slower and slower.
Let's see. I just want to ask a couple more questions. Yeah, how badly did the whole downloading thing affect the label?
I mean, it affected everybody in the music industry, but I felt like I did get a jump start on things. I had a feeling that things were going to go south, and I did do some promotion stuff early on. We did hire some publicists here and there, and would spend money on like posters and a little bit of tour support, but I cut everything.
Yeah.
I went down to 1 employee, stopped spending on anything extra, and I felt like we came out of it unscathed, where other labels, they just kept spending the same amount of money.
Well, did you do all that stuff like this is where you can take like a big gulp or a big bite of what you're eating. I'll kind of just fill in the gap here. But did you find that when the Napster thing started, you heard about it and you're like, I don't know, or was it just so apparent when you saw that coming that you were like, all right, I have a feeling this thing is going to totally screw us. Now we should cut ties with all those things? Or did it start trickling into the day to day where you saw the numbers starting to go down and you said, okay, this thing is definitely going to hit us. We should, start throwing off. It's like that scene in Young Guns where they're throwing out all the burnable stuff of the house and they lit it. Like, did you start doing it like right as it started to affect you?
I'm trying to think if there was like a definitive moment where I knew things were going south. I can't recall. I just knew.
Yeah.
I knew something was happening. Sales were definitely dwindling.
Have you noticed like lately, because even with, I mean, you put your bands on like Spotify and things like that, right?
Oh, yes.
What's the difference? I mean, I'm sure it's probably very known, but I don't understand it. Like, what is the difference between how, like, CDs being sold back then, making money off of them, and then, downloads now? Like, how does that work? Like, what is the difference between the two?
Well, right now, you hear a lot of complaints about Spotify, like your royalty rate being low. I think across the board with any label, let's treat Spotify as a distributor.
Okay.
They're the biggest distributor in the world right now. Every label, every band, the most money they're making is from Spotify.
Oh, shit.
It's great because if you think of it like this, let's say someone buys the vinyl, so you're getting the sale for the physical of the vinyl, and then they're listening to it on Spotify. So you're still making money off of it. Versus if they had bought it one time on CD back in the 90s, they're just going to listen to the CD over and over again. You're not getting paid for it.
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that.
Don't get me wrong. The money is not the same as it was in the 90s versus today, but I don't think it's an unhealthy situation right now. I feel like we're doing better than we have in a long time.
Wow. That's crazy.
It is.
Yeah. Jesus.
It's cool.
I wonder how a lot of labels would feel about that. I mean, I can't even imagine starting a label now and just from scratch. I mean, that's just got to be pretty insane, but
if you're doing it, you got to do it for fun.
yeah. Like I love I love the idea of how you just kind of go for like the fun route. There was some video I saw you were doing like a Skanking Pickle, and I've been trying to find this video. I think it was on Instagram or YouTube. You guys were doing a Skanking Pickle practice in a practice space, and you guys were just going nuts, just by yourself playing. Oh, it's a Bruce Lee band. Oh, okay, it's Bruce Lee band. I thought that was hilarious. I'm like, wow, these guys literally are just having fun to have fun.
Yeah, but totally staged. We could not keep up that energy for that whole song. We just went as crazy as we could for a minute.
It's just hilarious, though.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny.
All right, so a couple more questions, and I'll let you go. What would you say? And this is probably a loaded question, but what would you say your favorite releases that Asian Man put out?
Easy, just goddamn it.
Okay.
Easily the best release and my favorite release. I listened to that album so many times when it came out. It was in my CD player all the time. So as soon as I got to work, I just pushed play, and I would just keep pushing play throughout the day. It's such a good record. It's still such a good record.
Yeah, so the band I used to be in, we played a show one time. It was in Connecticut. It was right as, goddamn it just came out. So it was us, Alkaline Trio, and oh my god, what the hell were these guys called? This is gonna drive me nuts. They ended up changing their name and going on to Vagrant Records, but it was the three of our bands and my buddy's college that he put it on, and there was probably 10 people in the crowd, including the bands, right? And
wow.
So we play, and we had heard the 7-inch, like with Cooking Wine. That was like my favorite song when I heard that on that 7-inch.
That's the song that turned me on to Alkaline Trio, was Cooking Wine.
It was just like so amazing. Just the lyrics, the scream at the end, I was so good. I can imagine that being so many people's songs. They came through Jersey and they were just selling that record, and my buddy bought it and I heard it. I was like, holy Christ, this band's amazing. So we played the show with them, and God damn it just came out, and they were touring with like demos, or I think you had just given them pre-releases, so they didn't have the CD jacket or the artwork.
So you just had the discs, huh?
Yeah, it was just the discs in plastic, and he was selling them at the table, and we like we played with them, and they ended with 97, which is a song I never even heard of, which I thought was like,
Yeah.
wow, what the hell is this song? Hopefully it's on. God damn it, it wasn't. I was so bummed. But then we got that record, but it was just so crazy to think back to just 10 people being there. God damn it, had just come out, and it was one of those moments where when you're talking about the past of all these shows you used to go see, like that to me is one of those standout moments of I can't believe I got to see that and be a part of that show because it was right when that record came out and they just exploded in the stratosphere.
And you got to see the original lineup. I mean, Derek Grant is an amazing drummer, one of the best drummers I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But that original drummer, you can't replicate his sound. He's my favorite Alkaline Trio drummer, Glenn Porter.
Yeah, Glenn, I always thought I mean, again, I heard all these crazy stories about him, which could be true or false or whatever, like how he got kicked out, but he seemed like
All
he was
true.
yeah. We were on tour with Lawrence Arms. I asked Brendan about that. I was like, so can you tell me about radio? He's like, oh yeah, it's totally true of what that's about. I was like, holy Christ, that's insane. But he seemed like he was like a loose cannon, but his drumming style also mimicked that to me. And Derek is just like solid and tight. Like when you watch him, he just has this like style, but he just so on it. But Glenn was just
Yeah.
there was a chaos to it, which was so perfect.
Yeah, totally. You hit it on the nose. I mean, he's flawless. It looks like he's not even trying.
Oh, I think I lost you there for a sec.
Sorry.
That's okay.
An incoming call came and it's put you on hold. I was like, huh? What the heck?
What's the future of Asian Man, do you think? Just do you ever want to just close it down and do something different?
Keep doing it as long as it's fun. If it's no fun, stop.
Okay. Super simple. All right. So right before the last question, so before we end this, what would you like to plug?
I started an Instagram page, The Shake Face. It's just pictures of my friends shaking their face so it distorts. That's all I want to plug. The Shake Face.
I'm on that right now. 15 posts, 1,000 followers. That's great. Dizzying fun that makes the world a better place. The Shake Face, and I'll post the best ones. That's great. Oh, hashtag it the Shake Face. Oh, so if you're out there, you can hashtag something you're doing the Shake Face, and he'll put it on there. That's great. That's great. All right. So last question to close this out. What scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
Being kind, be inclusive. That's always been the main point. You see someone at a show, kind of like a newbie, kind of no one to talk to. I always try to talk to them.